It's the most expensive race in Illinois history, and Tuesday, voters will decide if they want to keep the governor they've got or replace him with another. We caught up with 3 of the 4 candidates on the ballot to ask them 5 important questions about the race.
The first one, what is the biggest single issue facing the state over the next 4 years, and how do they plan to fix it?
We need to balance the budget of the state of Illinois. It's fundamentally unbalanced. As you know, for 2 years, Governor Rauner didn't introduce a balanced budget proposal, and didn't get one passed. And unfortunately, lots of damage was done to working families. A 3rd year, he also didn't introduce a balanced budget and was overridden because Republicans finally got together with Democrats to get a budget done. We need to balance the budget by dealing with the challenges of a structural deficit, which some people have estimated at about $1.5 to $2 billion. We've got to address that by both making efficiencies in the state, which I've talked about, happy to expound on those, and by bringing new revenues, both by creating jobs and attracting businesses to the state, and by legalizing marijuana, for example, which is one of my proposals, which would bring in about $700 million of new revenue to the state. I actually think it might be more than that.
Our core problem in the state of Illinois is for decades, our economy has been growing dramatically slower than our government spending. When you boil it all down, that's the core problem in the state. And that's largely caused by a corrupt political machine out of Chicago that's controlled our politics for 35 plus years. Excessive government spending, a lot of corruption, a lot of tax hikes, and a lot of pushing employers out. A lot of employers have left. They've gone to states more, Indiana is #1, but they've gone to Texas, Tennessee, and other states. We've got to fix that dynamic, and everything that I've been working to do in my first term, and that I will continue to do in my second term, is bring down the drivers of government spending and increase the economic growth rate. And I'm proud to be endorsed again, as I was 4 years ago, by all the major job creator organizations in Illinois, the Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturers Association, the NFIB, the independent business, the small business owners, all the associated contractors and builders. We even won a national award from the National Black Chamber of Commerce for doing more for black business in Illinois than any elected official across the United States. We're very pro-business and pro-growth, and that's what we need in order to fix our budget problems.
Well, 2 things. So property taxes and unfunded pension liabilities. These are our 2 greatest fiscal issues that we're facing as a state, and it's something that we share, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. We all share the burden of having to pay these debts with our pensions, and as well as looking at how can we protect our citizens from being taxed out of their homes. And that's a large driver of people leaving the state, is they just can't, frankly, they can't afford to live here anymore. And what I would like to do is protect homeowners, protect people that are renting by instituting a 1% property tax cap, so that if you purchase a home for $200,000, you don't pay more than $2,000 for the life of that home, that you own it. And in doing so, what we're going to do is provide some stability to the housing market, which is huge for people. They want to know they're not going to be taxed out of their home. And for young people that are moving out of college, transitioning into the workforce, that gives them a lot more incentive to want to stay here and keep their roots in Illinois. And I want that for them and their families. Now, people don't trust their local governments either. And so what I would like to see done is a 2/3 voter referendum put in place, so that before a local taxing body could raise those taxes, they need to get 66% of their local populace to approve of that. We're going to restore that power back to the people where it belongs until we can get our government and our spending under control.
In the first 2 years of Governor Rauner's term, the Democrats had the supermajority in both chambers.
So if the blue wave becomes a reality and Democrats regain that in 2018, we asked the candidates, how would that impact your ability to get your agenda accomplished through the legislature?
Well, you know, the priorities of my campaign have really been the kitchen table issues. We need to raise wages and create jobs. We need to lower the cost of health care and lower the cost of higher education. So I put forward real plans for doing all of those things. I think we can get those done. For example, I put forward an idea, the public option, and really it was President Obama's idea, but it allows us to give people the opportunity to buy into the state's health insurance system, which is much less costly than a private health insurance insurance plan. That puts thousands of dollars back on the table for middle-class families and allows an expansion of health care for people who otherwise couldn't have afforded it, and gives small businesses an opportunity to offer it as an option to their employees. Often small businesses don't have the opportunity to offer health insurance. Higher education, I want to expand the MAP grant program in the state. Many people who apply for it and are eligible for it don't get it. And under Governor Rauner, of course, 2 years with no budget, a third year where the budget was vetoed, people didn't know whether they were going to get their MAP grants, and so lots and lots of kids chose to leave the state. Others chose not to go to college in Illinois, 72,000 kids. If you want to stanch the outflow of out-migration of people from the state of Illinois, we should invest in higher ed and make sure that we're improving the economy. But it's those kitchen table issues that are most important to me, and we can get that done with Democrats getting elected in the legislature.
Well, first I'll say I certainly hope that Madigan doesn't get more power in this election. That's would be devastating. He's been the most powerful elected official in Illinois for decades. He's led the corruption and the job losses and the tax hikes that have plagued our state. So I hope that we won't get a massive increase of legislators who are loyal to him. The good news is that he's weaker now today than he's ever been. I believe we'll get some reform-minded Democrats, but also some more Republicans into the General Assembly, because we can't have the corruption, the tax increases that have been plaguing us. Now, I have proven an ability. It took us a couple years of tussle, of struggle, but a proven ability to get a balanced budget done finally with the Speaker there and with his majority. Also got the Future Energy Jobs Act done to protect our energy jobs, especially here in Central Illinois, and conservation. Got $500 million for the U of I to expand the U of I here in Champaign, but also in other communities around the state. Got record school funding and a new school funding formula, and that had been attempted for 25 years by my predecessors and never got done, but we got it done. We also transformed our healthcare services in the state of Illinois, and we got $2 billion in our Medicaid program to make us national leaders in mental health services. We have national leading criminal justice reform done on a bipartisan basis with the Democrats and Madigan's majority. We also got a tax cut for families who adopt in Illinois, an income tax credit. And we cut property taxes for disabled vets. So, and many other things. We've gotten a lot done. And I've learned that what we need to do, as long as Madigan has a majority, is to look for incremental change, incremental improvements. Now that we have a balanced budget, we don't have to have any more impasses. Now we can make the changes we need gradually over time, grow the economy faster by making the regulatory burden more reasonable for business, and bring down the cost of government. Primarily, the initial way would be to get pension reform done, which I think we're very close to. Came close in my first term. I think we'll get it done next year.
Well, in all likelihood, Democrats will retain the majority, and that's just the nature of Illinois, and the fact that we have a two-party system, the fact that we have gerrymandered districts, and it's very difficult for third parties and independents to get into office, as well as the restrictive ballot access measures that third parties and independents have. And if we want to kind of break down that majority, well, number one, we need fair ballot access. I should need to get 5 times the amount of signatures just to get onto the ballot so that I can compete against a Republican or a Democrat. But if they do hold the majority, that's what it is, and that's what I'll have to work with. But being a Libertarian, I don't have a party boss, I don't have anybody that I must answer to, and I have the ability to work across the aisle as freely as I need to progress good legislation, to develop rapport and relationships with people on each side of the respective aisle, if you will, and to do what's best for the entire state of Illinois. I don't have a party boss to answer to. I don't have any political action committees or special interest groups that fund me. And so I am truly independent and autonomous in my ability to do things in Springfield.
Polls show us that most voters don't believe Illinois is heading in the right direction, but that's been a problem for a while that dates back decades.
So we asked candidates what direction they believed the state was going in when Governor Rauner was first elected, and has that changed since?
We had a lot of challenges in 2014. There's no doubt about it in this state. We had the challenge of meeting the pension obligations that we had. We had the challenge of actually balancing the budget of the state. We had the challenge of making sure that we're providing a quality education for every child in Illinois. Those were all things that were existing in 2014 when Governor Rauner ran the first time. Look, We're now 4 years later. He's done nothing about any of those things, and during 4 years, he's been fundamentally an obstructionist. He's somebody who doesn't know how to work with people. He's been the guy who is unwilling to stay in the room to get a budget done for 3 years in a row. Now he gives a speech in which he expresses regret over the way that he operated for the last 4 years and that he's learning on the job and so on. But he's fundamentally been a failure for 4 years, and now he's saying, I learned some lessons, please elect me because I'm going to change. I think most of us learned to work together with people to get things done when we were in kindergarten, and I've been doing it my whole life, getting big things done for the people of Illinois, whether it's expanding health care, expanding universal child care and preschool, making sure that we're creating jobs like I did at 1871, thousands of good paying jobs, and creating a museum that helps teach kids and adults to fight bigotry, hatred, and intolerance. They're big things for the state. I know we can do so much to help lift up working families across this state. In
2014, we'd been suffering from the same problems that had plagued us for 35 years. Deficits, high taxes, rising taxes, massive corruption. You know, 4 of my 9 predecessors as governor went to prison. Dominance by Mike Madigan and his political machine, and employers who'd been leaving the state. We only grew 60,000 jobs in the prior 12 years before I became governor. Only 60,000 jobs in 12 years under Blagojevich, Quinn, and Madigan, one-party rule. I became governor. Oh, and by the way, I'll say, we, under their rule, under Madigan through 2014, we became the worst state in America for funding K-12 schools. We gave the lowest percentage of any state government to fund local education. I became governor and I said, no more of this. We brought in pro-growth, pro-investment leaders into our offices in state government. We've passed many executive orders to cut the red tape and the regulations on our businesses. The economy has grown faster. We've grown 210,000 new jobs since I became governor. And again, we've been endorsed by all the job creators. We've streamlined government. We've become a national leader now in digitizing government services and modernizing our IT infrastructure so we can drive down the costs of government and increase productivity. And we have now record funding, $1.4 billion more for K-12 schools, a new funding formula, and record funding for early childhood education. I look forward to doing the same thing for higher education in my second term.
It's just gotten worse. Going into 2014, we were already having a lot of issues in funding our pensions, and again, that's a predominant driver of why people are leaving the state, because it is such a significant burden, and it only increased over that 4-year time frame. And not passing a balanced budget, and then the budget that we did pass, it didn't take long before we very quickly realized, well, the projected revenues that were going to be in place that we thought, i.e. selling the Thompson building for, I think, the 3rd time now, which still hasn't transpired, it's just the same old, same old. So really, nothing has changed. It's only gotten worse.
One of the biggest issues in this race is how much you pay in taxes. Right now, the state collects about $21.5 billion in income tax, but 4 years ago, we were bringing in more at the same rate, $23.5 billion. The problem, people are leaving.
So we asked them, is that enough to cover our bills, or do we need to collect more?
Well, let's remind everybody how we can improve revenue in the state, and that's creating jobs. And Governor Rauner, when he ran, he attacked his opponent, that was Pat Quinn, in 2014, saying that he was a miserable failure at job creation. Well, now we're 4 years into Governor Rauner's term, and during the same amount of time, Governor Rauner has created fewer jobs than the guy he said was a miserable failure at job creation. If you want to enhance revenue in a state, you got to create jobs, you got to attract businesses. That's what I intend to do, and I have a real history of doing that. Governor Rauner does not. So that's number one. Number two, we've got to change the tax system and make it fairer for people in the middle class and those who are striving to get there, and ask people who are wealthier in the state to step up to the plate. We need to balance the budget. We need to pay for our schools properly. Very importantly, we have to lower property taxes, and that's why changing to a fair tax system is so important, because our schools are now paid for. Vast majority of it comes from property taxes, and in most other states that's not true. We need to shift the burden of that so that the wealthiest people in the state pay a little bit more, people like Bruce Rauner and me, and that the most people in the state get a tax break, an income tax break, and a property tax break.
It's not the question of what's the tax rate should be or how much income tax do we need. What do we do to change the dynamic and the growth rate between our economy and government spending? What we do not have in the state of Illinois is a tax revenue problem. We have plenty of tax revenue. We have some of the highest taxes in the United States of America. We're in the top 10, top 5 in most rankings of overall tax burden. We have very high taxes and we pay a lot of taxes. We don't need any more tax increases whatsoever. What we do need to change is the growth rate of our economy and the growth of our government spending. And if we raised income tax, as an example, or any other tax, like a vehicle miles tax, as my opponent has proposed, and the General Assembly has tried to pass several times during my time that I've blocked, if we raise taxes, it'll only make the problem worse. Many of your viewers, I'm sure, have friends or relatives in New Jersey or Connecticut. They've raised their income taxes to some of the highest in America. They have very high property taxes. They can't balance their budget. They can't pay their pensions. Taxes won't solve the problem. You got to take on the structural reasons why our economy grows much slower than our government. That's what I'm taking on: pension reform, healthcare reform, regulatory relief for businesses, shrinking the bureaucracy. If we did all the recommendations that my lieutenant governor and I made in the bipartisan task force that we put together on unfunded mandates and government consolidation, and be happy to send you or put out for your viewers a list of those recommendations. If we did all 27 recommendations, we could save $6 billion per year. Way more than we need to balance a budget, to get an income tax reduction, and to fund our human services and our education. We need government reform and faster economic growth, not higher taxes.
There is, well, it's more than enough. We have incurred entirely too much debt, and it doesn't matter how much revenue we bring in. At the end of the day, if we don't change the type of policymakers we're putting in place, they're going to outspend whatever revenue we bring in. So if we were to legalize cannabis and do some structural reforms to the criminal justice system to where we weren't spending millions of dollars to incarcerate people for victimless crimes, if we weren't doing those things and we still had that revenue, they're going to find some other way to be wasteful and not be responsible with people's money. And so the largest thing that we can do is establish additional parties like Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, any of those things, to where we have more choices for these races. We've got about 40% of seats that go unopposed every year. And so those elected representatives, they don't have to defend their voting record. They don't have to defend their policies and what they campaigned on. They just expect that, hey, I'm a Democrat, it's a gerrymandered district, or a Republican, it's a gerrymandered district. I should get your vote because I'm an R or a D. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be, hey, you did terrible in Springfield. We're looking at your voting record here, and these are some really bad pieces of legislation that you signed on to. And, oh, and also we see who you were financed by. You were financed by these special interest groups, these unions, whatever it might be. Look, you're beholden to somebody else, not the people, so we're going to vote for someone else this year.
This election season has been filled with campaign promises.
But how do you pay for it? We asked the candidates to explain and show their work.
We can get an awful lot done in year one, I believe. We should raise wages for people, raising the minimum wage in Illinois. I think that'll be an important thing for us to get done. Second, I believe that we'll be able to pass legalization of recreational marijuana in year one. We won't be able to implement it right away because we need to make sure we've got the right regulatory processes in place, the licensing procedures and so on. We want to make sure we do it the right way, like it's been done in a few other states the right way, make sure we don't do it the wrong way like in other states. And there are also things we can do to protect our workers in the state. You know, Governor Rauner has tried to attack working families and workers, lowering wages for people by attacking their collective bargaining rights. I want to make sure that people have the right to collectively bargain and to get a better wage and to lift up their standards of living. I talked about the major things, the kitchen table issues. Lowering the cost of health care is a pretty important one. I think we can get that done in year one. I don't want to say we for sure can because it might take a little bit more than a year to do. The same thing is true, though. My higher ed plan will increase MAP grants and make it a much lower cost for people to go to school in the state. I want to get that done right away as well.
The most important thing we need to do is get an infrastructure bill done. Infrastructure drives our economic growth. We are the hub of transportation for North America in Illinois. We have underinvested in our infrastructure for decades. We do not need more taxes to fund our infrastructure program. We need to do four things. First, get a balanced budget where infrastructure is prioritized. Second, get more resources from the federal government, and I'm very close with Elaine Chao, the U.S. Transportation Secretary. She's already given us record grants to upgrade our rail system, and we're going to do the same for roads. Third, we need to do more public-private partnerships. There are many businesses that would like to invest in our rail system, in our highways, in our toll roads, in our airports, and we can do more public-private financing, just like Texas is doing in many well-run states, rapidly growing states. And the other idea that I'm very open to, and I think could benefit our infrastructure, would be to do a gaming bill.
Of course, I can't make any promises in regards to what type of legislation would get passed or would get repealed or anything to that effect. The only thing that I can promise voters is that I will be very transparent. I will open up not only the governor's office, but I will work to open up all offices so that people can really see what is happening with politics, what is happening in Springfield, and they'll know that they have somebody that truly cares about them. As much time and energy as I spend on the streets, that I spend in communities talking to people, they know that I genuinely care about doing what's best for the state and not sticking to a hard partisan line. And so where Bruce Rauner, I believe, kind of went wrong early on is where he just really put up all of these walls and barriers before he ever set foot into office. And in doing so, he really made it extremely difficult to pass any good legislation or to build those relationships. We can't do that. These are also men and women that are serving their communities that I believe want to do what's best by them. The majority of them, I think they do. And I don't want to put up those barriers. I want them to know, look, I'm open and I'll sit down and have a conversation. And I want to work together. And I think that that's what Illinois expects. They expect me to go into Springfield and work across both sides of the political aisle.